Welcome to Field Talk, a Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. Join our host, Wallace Curry, as he explores the stories from Monitor Farm networks on how farmers have adapted their businesses with support from specialists and experts to assess farm performance and explore opportunities. Monitor Farm Scotland is farmer-led, farmer-driven, encouraging discussion and solution-based thinking.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. I'm Wallace Curry, and the last guest we had on the podcast was Bruce Irvin. We spoke about, primarily yow health and profitability with Bruce, which is a really good chat. And today we have another Monitor farmer. So the whole scope of this podcast is interviewing farmers involved in the programme, associated people throughout the process as well. Today we have the owner of the Roxburghshire Monitor Farm, Robert Wilson, who farms at Cowbog in Roxburgh. Funnily enough, goes without saying. The theme of today's episode is finding that sweet spot in farming. And as I said last week, you're not here to hear from me, you're here to hear it from Robert. So, Robert, would you like to say hello?
Hello, I'm Robert.
How you doing, man? You well?
Yeah, not too bad. So,
yep. Podcasting a new thing for you?
Yeah, first one I've been on. So, go gently.
Oh dear, that's the only plan. I don't know how to be unfair as an interviewer. I just want to have a chat with people. That's all these things are meant to do. And here, the point of this whole thing is to open up to the Monitor Farm program to other people that might be interested in the future, maybe folk that aren't aware of it, maybe they could even sort of get involved at the minute and come and see people that are involved as it goes currently. And yeah, it's going to be pretty boring to hear if I just interrogate you and make you feel rubbish the whole thing.
Okay.
Robert, just for a bit of backstory, it's always quite good for folk listening to just hear a wee bit about someone, just to kick off, to give them a wee bit of a story to start off with. So, what's the sort of farm? What's it like? We've always said roughly where it is. Is it something that's been in the family for a while?
It's been in the family 3 generations. We're based down at Kelso on one of the Roxburgh estate farms. We have one farm on a 91 Act tenancy. And then 2 other farms that are that we contract farm for the estate. One of them we've contract farm for 5 years, and the other one's just gone into a contract farming arrangement with having the lease just ended.
Is it, you say we there? I take it it's not just yourself involved, family farming as well?
It's myself and my father in the farming business, which it sort of revolves around a herd of pedigree Herefords that my grandfather started. So the beef enterprise is the main part of the farm. We've got about 100 cows and followers of them.
Tell us about both the beef herd and the sheep flock then. Let's hear about them.
Well, we'll get the sheep flocks really quick. So we've got 9 of those, and they belong to my son.
Got you.
So that's that dealt with.
Yeah, that was easy enough.
Yeah. The cattle, the Hereford herd was started in 1955, and it's the oldest herd of Herefords in Scotland. We're moving, well, not to jump too far forward, but part of the Monitor Farm recommendations was, to tighten up calving. So we have been calving twice. We're moving to calving just once in the spring. So that, yeah, we've still got on calving just now, but probably won't have next year. And we're selling sort of breeding stock and fat cattle in a few stores as well out of them.
Find yourself showing at all?
We used to show an awful lot, and sort of cut back just before COVID. It was taking too much time, and we needed just to put the brakes on that. And COVID came along and stopped it nicely. We've gone back slowly into it, and limited amount. The kids are quite keen to show, so we'll drag a calf out now and again, and maybe a few adult cattle going forward.
Your changes in calving will be quite a big transition. What did that how did that present itself? Was it an easy enough transition, or was there challenges?
We're not quite there with the transition. Probably the biggest challenge has been to do it without losing production or losing sales. So just about every Monitor Farm meeting that we have with our management group or board of other farmers, I start it by saying we're overstocked, and they say, "Well, you said that last time," and yeah, but we're getting there. So that's been the biggest challenge on top of some challenging years weather-wise. One, well, 2023 being really dry, and then 2024 being really wet. So that's been a bit of a challenge. But like I say, we're there now, and we can. It's yeah, it's just been a long process.
I know they say the UK is temperate, don't they? But it feels like we get one or the other at the minute. Um,
Yeah,
so the kid's quite interested in the farm, sounds like.
yeah, they are. They are. Son who is going to be a rugby player and farm, and daughter who has said she doesn't want to farm but might do something rural. But they're both very much, yeah, it's part and parcel of being at home as a farm. So they enjoy it a lot.
It's a very good point, that. Very good point. Um, One thing that will be of interest to folk, I'm quite certain, Robert, is the fact that, a lot of people will be farming, regardless of size of place, it's normally one place, whether it's big, small, whatever. Um, or if it's more than one place, they're normally in the same sort of format. But you're farming both tenancy and contract farming. How does that work together? Is they work hand in hand? Do they almost rub against each other the wrong way, or how do you make that work?
Uh, they work okay, and obviously they help us offset a few costs having those extra acres, which the estate's obviously very aware of, and does try to help tenants. Quite a few people now on contract farming arrangements. Um, it obviously would be easier having a lease, but I think those days in Scotland are past at the moment, just with until land reform sorted out, and I can completely understand that from a tenant's point of view. Um, they're they're all the units are beside each other, which is quite handy. So one of the farms we farmed for a previous Roxburgh tenant before they left the farm. Um, so we farmed that for 40 years in one way or another, and then the other farm we've had on a lease for 23 years. So we know the land, we know the farms, and part of joining the Monitor Farm program was because we knew this lease was going to end, and we wanted a bit of help and talking around the table about how to best approach the contract farming arrangement, moving forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned about land reform there. Do you see a period in the future where that shifts in how we see how it working?
I really don't know. I'd be speculating. You'd hope it would be because the contract farmer operations are good, but they're generally short term, like they're 3 or 5 years, which doesn't. I don't think it gives people a lot of confidence. Although um, we've been contract farm one of the farms for 5 years, and that'll be moving on to 8 now. And all indications are that the estate want to keep the same people farming them, and keep the continuity going there. But it's still not the same as having either an owned place or a long-term lease.
I mean, it sounds like at your estate are quite progressive, quite open with the farmers as well. But I mean, it's even one that's you're going on to 8. It's still 3 at the minute, isn't it? It's not been 8 years. It's really difficult to look ahead and say, right, our 8-year plan is this, when in truth, you're actually on year one of 3, just with 5 behind you. It's kind of difficult because you don't have that full duration ahead of you. Um, yeah, it's not uncertainty because you know it's there, but it's how long is that certainty going to be there for? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Contract farming arrangements they're probably better for the land than a short-term tenancy, I would suggest, because obviously as contractors we're not paying for the input. So if the likes of lime and um, uh, inputs need to go into the farm, then they do, and they just come out the costings. Whereas I guess with a tenancy, if it's coming to an end and you're in year sort of 7 or 8, you think, do we lime that field? Are we going to get anything back from it? So from that point of view, it's probably good.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And a question that's probably important to ask, Robert, is you're here as a monitor farm farmer. Um, why? What was the original decision to get involved? And yeah, how have you found it?
We've we were slightly involved in the agritourism monitor farm um, project, which was sort of ran into the end of COVID, so 2021, I think it was. And we saw how beneficial it was to other people's business and the format that it was run under, and people sharing thoughts and ideas. And um, because it's probably just myself and my father on the farm, and because we had, because there are challenges with the aforementioned tenancy ending and changes to subsidy system and things like that, then it's probably better to have more people to talk about these issues with. So that was one of the reasons to sign up. Another reason was because my mother said, "Please don't sign up to the Monitor Farm project." And like every petulant child, you always do the opposite of what your mother asks you to do.
It's so true. It's so I feel like maybe your mum wanted you to do it, and that's certainly what my mum does. She sort of sees something that's probably good for me or whatever. So you probably shouldn't do that. And then I'm like, well, I've got to find a way of that, haven't I?
Yeah,
How's it been? You're just over 2 years in now, is that right?
yeah, we're just almost literally 2 years. It's been good. We have had a heavy focus because of the uncertainty about what was going to happen land wise. We probably couldn't push on as much as we wanted. We've had difficult years weather-wise, with drought and wet, so probably making radical changes or just having the capacity when you're sort of at the coal face or the flood face as it was this year, to change. It's slightly tricky, but we've probably worked quite hard on the business behind the scenes, a little bit of succession uh, stuff. And yeah, just really pinning down figures rather than making a lot of physical changes. I would say it's yeah, it's been good, and like I say, just having more heads around the table is useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe one thing to jump on there, Robert, is we're filming this a wee bit in advance, but about pretty much a month ago today, actually, at the time of recording, we had the budget in it through succession into the news. How important do you think that discussion on succession is?
Um, well, yeah, it's always going to be a difficult chat. We we got a facilitator in to sort of sit with us and talk through it. It was quite a long meeting, but we got quite a lot sorted out, and in it, we sort of knew it's quite an easy system for us. It's when it's just my parents and myself and Lucy, my wife, then it's fairly simple, but it's never an easy discussion. But it's good for everybody to know what's going on and get a few things written down. And only last week we went to update our wills and power of attorneys and things like that. And probably without the push from the Monitor Farm project, you can be guilty of kicking the can down the road a wee bit and getting nothing written down.
Yeah, sometimes these groups where there's a few people like the sort of management group that's involved with the Monitor Farm program, it's almost like that accountability group. I have it with I'm doing a Nuffield scholarship at the minute, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm doing fine, totally knowing fine well there's things I'm pretending I'm not doing right. And they're like, oh, well, so what about that? And you really need that sometimes. I think we're quite good at bumbling through life. Even though we're doing the majority of things, there's some things that we shouldn't do. And yeah, I think that discussion is one that all should do, as awkward and as tricky as it might be for a few hours, just sort of know where everyone sits. But
Yeah, like I say, it's relatively easy for us, but still, it was going to be a niggle if we didn't get something said. I appreciate for other people, it's maybe harder and bigger family dynamics. Um, yeah.
oh yeah, it's different in every situation. You mentioned your involvement prior to this Monitor Farm program, Robert. You were involved in the agritourism Monitor Farm program. Uh, you guys have got a diversification business. Could you tell us a wee bit about that and how it fits in with the farm?
Yeah, so we've well, it's mainly Lucy who runs it, called Wilson's Farm and Kitchen, and it sort of revolves around an old stable block that we sort of renovated a little bit 2016, 2017 with the help of a leader grant. And at that stage, it was when we first started, we were doing something slightly different. We had people coming onto farm to do activities and learn a bit about cattle and pedigree cattle. And then COVID came along and we had a bit of a sort of COVID pivot more down a food-based offering. So we do sort of pop-up dining experiences, private parties. We're sort of branching out into the travel trade quite heavily now. We have groups of Americans come through and they're sort of staying locally and then they come to us for a sort of farm tour, bagpipe making course, or not course, bagpipe making demonstration, and then a meal afterwards with produce from the farm and from neighbours.
You know, I told you just before we hit record how many people I'd interviewed, and I had never came across someone that spoke about bagpipe making, that's for sure. Can
Oh,
you
it's
do,
not me. I don't do it.
I was going to say, can you do it yourself? That's quite the skill. The First off, quick mention to those listening, go check out Wilson's Farm and Kitchen because the food looks delightful. There's what looks like some kind of, I don't know, some kind of seafood here with a sauce and some limes that looks absolutely delightful. But I have sold that terribly, but go check it out. It sells itself better than I will. Does the farm business and the food business work hand in hand, Robert?
Yeah, the going forward, we hope they're going to tie in, more together. It's been easier to keep them relatively separated apart from sort of crossover of beef or produce out of the garden into the kitchen, just to get started and get everything up and running. We very much, we knew in 2016 or 2017 that this lease was going to come to an end, which is why we put investment into doing that rather than putting a big shed up for cows or something, or a grain shed or something. We just wanted to be a bit more resilient, so that's why we went down that route. It'll keep tying in more with the farm, I would say, as we go forward.
Yeah, there's certainly scope there, and I think people often hear about just let's take your example, a farm with a food business associated, that there's crossover straight away, but it's not that simple. There's a lot of process involved to get there. So, yeah, it certainly sounds like that's part of the plan, but it's not something that happens overnight. You're at this stage, Robert. You mentioned a wee bit there. You're 2 years in. You said a few of the things that have sort of happened, but what's been the main focus for you of being involved with the Monitor Farm program?
I would say the main focus is to look hard at the numbers behind the business. Some our KPIs on the beef enterprise were good, and apart from an extended calving, the numbers were good. Calves born and what we were selling and weaning. So we felt there weren't many changes there. We looked and are looking hard at the arable side of it, and not necessarily just practical side in terms of how we tackle the crops, but just whether they're actually profitable at all. We're trying hard to strip out subsidies from everything, strip out beef calf, strip out conservation payments as well, and then really looking at the business, because it's quite easy at the moment to include them and think you're doing well. We did a big project with a company called Nethergill Associates, and as you mentioned in your intro about hitting the sweet spot, they maintain there's a sweet spot in farming where what the land can produce, and land and the atmosphere, I guess, the sun and the rain, and what the farm's naturally capable of. So we've looked hard at that, and that's basically saying, I guess, similar to what we're looking at. We're looking at the economic output, but they put it in energy terms, and say if you put too much energy in, then you're not going to get that back out the farm again with, in terms of foodstuffs. And I guess that's tied back to economics as well.
And when you're talking about that, is because we have a chat with Beth and yourself before we sort of jump into these. You were talking about maximum sustainable output. Is that what you're talking about there? It's not attacking the ground to the point that you're actually reducing its ability. It's trying to create a sort of regenerative soil, regenerative business, and more. Is that what you're talking about there?
Yes, it's tricky. It's taken a bit of getting my head around, and I think everybody in the group as well. And because because we're a group of farmers, everyone different opinions, and some people sort of embraced it and see the benefits. Some people are saying, we've got to be careful here because, if you, for instance, don't feed cattle, you don't put fertilizer on, or you don't do, I guess, what we're all used to doing. How are you going to still get that output? And is it a pessimistic view to only try and get what the farm's naturally capable of? Should we be giving nature a helping hand in some way or another? So the sweet spots, I think it's going to be good to aim for. And we were about 85% in our initial audit, and I think we could get maybe another 5 or 10% on that, but I don't think we'll ever get to 100% maximum sustainable output, because I always feel we're going to have to do something else just to help here and there, especially if we're selling bulls and things. And yeah,
It's an interesting one, that, because when you talk about something that's maximum sustainable out, in my head, I see a scale of, maximum output, minimum output, maximum sustainable output, I guess, is somewhere between those two. And it's almost like when you're saying you're at 85%, are you ever going to reach 100% of maximum sustainable output? It's kind of like this whole concept of you've got developed and developing countries. And, the UK is quote unquote developed. But in my head, I'm like, well, does that mean we stop? Like, are we done? Are we developed? Like, yes, you might hit maximum sustainable output today, but for next week, that's going to be further. And it's a process, isn't it? It's not, I don't think there's a destination. Or is that not your take on it?
No, the Chris and Brian from Nethergill did say that it's it's a moving target. It doesn't move much, but it is a moving target.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And what in your head, you've obviously sort of said 85% there, but what in your head, looking at your farm, is what you're aiming for?
In terms of the MSO.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
I think we're sort of our industrial use, our industrial energy use in terms of feed, fertilizer, and fuel. I think that there's certainly crops that we grow that aren't producing. They're only just producing an average yield. They're not producing a great yield. So whether we can cut the likes of fertilizer use and fuel use from those by maybe including more grass and having stock grazing a bit longer, so therefore also reducing a feed bill as well, and tackling it that way rather than just saying, right, we're not going to feed the cattle or we're not going to put fertilizer on crops. I feel that's the way that we need to practically approach it.
Yeah, got you. And it is interesting, that, because it's one of those things that if you've got numbers put to it, it's obviously objective to a point, but it's also, there's a bit of perception and there's a bit of, well, this farm works this way. It's very interesting because the moving target's a really good explanation. It'll be quite cool to see what that looks like in 2 years and 5 years and 10 years. To see if you're sitting at 85%, but you're in a better place. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you've moved towards that sort of better 100%, if you will. I don't know how it works. It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Sorry, Robert. On you go.
Well, one of the things Chris and Brian were big on pushing us into was management accounts, so that we have an idea, sort of now we'll have an idea next year what our output looks like and what we should be, maybe we shouldn't be putting on fertilizer onto crops because financially we're not going to get it back, and therefore energy wise we're not going to get it back either. And that's, I think looking forward and planning a bit more looking forward is going to be a major part of it as well. When Chris spoke to us in Edinburgh, he spoke to all the monitor farmers, and out of all the monitor farmers, there was only one that was doing management accounting at the time. So it was something that bringing it back to our group, and not to get the two things confused, but our management group, who are like the board on the farm. Hopefully most of those other farmers are going to adopt management accounting as well. Interestingly, the one person in the group in Edinburgh when we were up there with all the other monitor farmers was actually somebody on our management group who was doing it. So it was quite interesting here from them.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting question I really want to ask about. I am not a businessman, don't know anything about all this stuff, but a lot of the sort of documents we utilize in business are looking at today and longer ago, a while ago. So this is a much more sort of looking forward atmosphere. Tell us a wee bit about how management accounting works. You don't need to go into specifics of all the jazz, but just what it means for your business.
For us, it's like, I guess it's like budgeting. For the contract farming, we do budgeting, and they're never that far away. But it's maybe taken, rather than just looking at the enterprise and doing a gross margin, it's taking it further, doing more with the stock as well, looking at how the whole picture looks rather than just enterprises. So have a guess of what our energy usage might be. Have a guess of what our feed, not a guess, an educated guess, at what our feed costs might look like and where the output is, and should we're obviously we're breeding these pedigree Herefords, but should we be dropping the bottom end of the bulls that we usually feed? Should we be cutting them and selling them on for store somewhere because somebody else can make a better job of them, and we can reduce our costs? And quite often, some of the decisions I guess we make on farms are sort of firefighting. So it's trying to avoid a bit of that.
And does it allow for, if you're able to look a year in advance, I know it's not look, it's forecast. Once that year in advance is done and you've seen, okay, that was kind of accurate, then you work on it next year and you keep sort of going, you get more and more accurate. Does that over time allow you the ability to almost sort of financially forecast 2 and 3 and 5 years in advance?
I think if we can get to a year, Wallace, we'll do well. So
I would agree. I would agree.
I think we'll start small steps. We went because I was told we had a sort of induction for the monitor farm process with previous monitor farmers, and they said, whatever you do, just take every advantage over the next 4 years and do what you can. And we went recently went down to a course run by ranch consultants from America called Ranching for Profit, run by the AHDB, and then QMS also supported the Scottish people who were down as well. And they were very much. It was an awesome course. I've probably not done anything like that since I was at college, and they said 80% accuracy is fine. Go, aim for 80%, and you won't be far away with that.
Tell us a wee bit about that course. It sounds quite interesting.
Yeah, it was like I say, I hadn't done anything other than probably necessary tick box exercises. A course like that. There was a lot of topics. There was topics on. It was all obviously around profit and economics, but how to stop the paradigms, I think it was. Is that what the new word they used? You might have to cut that bit. There's all sort of thoughts in farming. Somebody says, "Oh, I can't outwinter stock on my farm," and we always do that on that day, and they're like, "Well, I chuck them out the window to start with. Anything's possible if you sort of budget it and think about it practically." They presented processes for making decisions, and sort of a 7-step process, wearing different coloured hats. We weren't actually wearing the hats physically in the meeting, but just an idea of let people wear different hats, and somebody be the negative, somebody be the positive, somebody be economic. When you're making a decision, we all have ideas on farms. Don't have an idea, have a business plan. So if your son or your daughter or your wife or even your father, if he has a good idea, which I know we all think they don't, if they come to you with something, then say, right, put it in writing, give us a business plan, because we all have sort of ideas and blue sky thinking. So they're very much on the, like, don't say no, plan it out. There was a lot on maximising so the grass. So going back to the autumn calving, why do you calve in autumn? All you got to do is make silage all the time for these cows that are going to calve, and the maximum requirement for grass is going to be in November and December. And how much grass does the grass grow then? So, think about it from that point of view, where you can save costs. But yeah, just like a real sort of mind-opening experience. The last thing we did was actually write a letter to ourselves, or sorry, not to ourselves. We wrote a letter to somebody about what our ideal farm looks like, and we had to write our address on it. So I'm not sure when we're getting them back again, but it might be an interesting day when that comes through the post.
How similar to your current setup was your perfect farm?
It wasn't dissimilar, but it was probably it was everything. Every decision was probably made with a bit more knowledge and data on it. Naturally, we had hundreds of people here eating our beef, and we sold a few pedigree bulls, but more into the beef, the beef side of the business. And everyone was happy and everyone got along. So it was a bit of a dreaming letter.
I was going to say, everyone happy and everyone getting along in a family business is quite something there, Robert. That's impressive. You mentioned a really good thing there. You said about, if your son or your daughter or your wife, and you said even your father comes to you with a good point, to sort of write it down, business plan it, great, really good way to look at it. But it's a true thing you've said there, that I think sometimes with the progressive hat on, let's say that's orange in your hat wardrobe, you always think forward, and with that you think youth. And I think we're quite guilty, and I'll hold my hand up for saying this, of new ideas, exciting, passionate young folk are where the good ideas are coming from. But experience brings a lot of good ideas. Are you and your father 50-50 in decision making? How does that sort of present itself in the business?
No, well, I wouldn't say that. So I was maybe lucky or unlucky, depending, how you look at it. My father, when I finished college, or when I was just finishing college, my father took a job off the farm, one that he wanted, or one that he liked, running the Board of Union Agricultural Society, and so Kelso Show and Kelso Ram Sales and things like that. So I guess he did that for 20 years, or maybe just over 20 years. So I sort of got used to making decisions myself. And yeah, so the fact he was away and he was concentrating on building that business up, in terms of investments in infrastructure there, and quite focused on that. So it let me get on and make decisions myself. So if anything, it's probably got trickier since he retired from that, because I have to discuss them. but it was a good chance to make a lot of mistakes and or not major mistakes, but make little mistakes when he was at the board union and try a few different management things out. So we do discuss major decisions, but day-to-day practical management decisions are mine.
Yeah, no, that's good. And looking at where you are, Robert, I mean, you're 2 years into this program. There's 2 years left, and farming doesn't stop when the Monitor Farm program stops. What's next for the business? When I say business, I mean farming business. I also mean diversified business. Where do you see it sort of moving in the next few years?
I see more grass. I see more grass in the whole business. I think that's going to be, for us, being more resilient. I think we're going to have more acres of grass and not use as much fertilizer and things, especially if there's a 50 or 70 pound fertilizer tax coming in a couple of years. And I guess that's resilience against the losses of the arable side rather than, and increasing profits on the stock side of it. I think on our land type, arable, we need everything to go right all the time to make a decent return. So long term, I see more grass. I see more data driven decisions. We're hopefully going to, well, in Scotland, we're going to be sort of going down the electronic tag route anyway. We'd hope that we could go down that quicker through the Monitor Farm project, and maybe where I spend a lot of time working out at the moment, weeding weights, growth rates, things like that, we can have that data at our fingertips to make quicker decisions rather than when we can get around to doing those calculations. We're probably behind the curve a wee bit with some of this stuff, but it's just been quite easy to do it that way. And I think that's one thing about the Monitor Farm project, that it's not all the people in it, all 9 people, maybe with the exception of Duncan Morrison, who seems to be switched on to his Farmax stuff and knows what's going to happen in 2 years. But everybody's making the best decision with the data they've got at the moment. But I think we can all get better at it, and none of the 9 farms are perfect with anything they do. So it's important to remember that if you're going to meetings, it's not for us, and certainly not me, to show anybody what we're doing. It's how we're making changes that lead to improvements and then lead to better economics behind the business.
And I don't think there's any real place for a monitor farm that is perfect, because I mean, this is to create a benchmark, is to research what the best option for Scottish agriculture across the country is. And if that's already all singing, all dancing, working absolutely perfectly in every single regard, then there's nothing to learn for the farmer in your position, Robert. And there's not really anything to sort of be a representation of how anything works, So no, I think the way it's placed is valuable. We spoke to Duncan. If anyone's listening, we had Duncan on for episode 2. So yeah, first episode was Beth, second was Duncan. If you want to go hear a bit more in depth about Farmax and that, because yeah, that was pretty impressive stuff. Is that something that you guys are looking into, or is that not for now?
Not for now. It'd be ideal in the future, and the scenario planning sounds great because, yeah, we're probably guilty of not even planning the grazing far enough in front. You just sort of hope it's not. You hope it's going to rain, or it's not going to rain, or these kind of things. But if you could log that into a scenario and see how grass growth might be, that you can plan a bit going forward and know when your pinch points are, then it'd be great.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to chat, Robert. It's yeah, I've honestly really enjoyed these episodes where I've spoke to people in the Monitor Farm program, where I've maybe interviewed a few in the past, but just to hear the sort of transition of where a place, a business, a person is, when they get involved, sort of where that takes them, and what the sort of plan can be post it is quite interesting. It's also cool to see a business that's operating, two almost different sets of farming, both contract and tenancy, which is pretty impressive. There's a lot going on there. So thank you. Thank you for your chat.
No problem.
It's been really good to discuss and sort of see that sort of concept of finding the sweet spot is very interesting. We talk about finding the sweet spot all the time in so many different things. And sort of almost trying to put a term and put a sort of, I guess a concept towards it is cool, really cool. And I like this idea of maximum sustainable output. I've heard it a few times, but actually sort of hearing someone talking about how that's been implemented at home, or not home, but you know what I mean,
Yeah.
is cool. So yeah, really, really interesting to hear. So thank you for coming on. For those of you listening, that's been Robert Wilson. We'll go through all the things we did at the start, just in case I'd forgotten, from Cowbog Farm in Roxburghshire. Talking about how to find that sweet spot, as I said. So that maximum sustainable output, is that 85%? Is that 100%? Where is that 100% in 10 years is a cool thought. The last episode we had was with Bruce Irvin, speaking about yow health and profitability. I feel like that's actually a different word in there, but it's about sheep as well, as opposed to beef. So go have a listen to that one. Today, as we said, has been Robert Wilson. Thank you for listening to the Monitor Farm podcast, and we shall see you for the next episode. Just before you go, though, this is obviously a week before Christmas, so I hope you have a great Christmas and a great new year when it comes. The Monitor Farm podcast is going to take a little break over the Christmas period, and when we come back in January, we'll be doing a two-part series on lambing in Dumfries. So look forward to seeing you then. As I said, have a great Christmas and a great new year.
Thanks for tuning in to the Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. Don't forget to click subscribe wherever you get your podcast from for more episodes as we continue to dive into the stories from our Monitor Farms. If you want to stay updated with our latest news and events, please visit the Monitor Farm Scotland website and follow us on social media for more updates and keep in the know about what our farms are getting up to. Monitor Farm Scotland is funded by Scottish Government and managed by Quality Meat Scotland and AHDB.